Hello, good evening. I will try again. And now the echo is gone. So good evening, everyone. Welcome all Volt members online, everyone watching through Europe, somewhere in the world. Welcome to this General Assembly of Volt Europa on the 26th of June. First General Assembly after our second time participating in the European elections. I think that's a very cool milestone we have reached together. I'm Sylvia van Laar. I'm from the Dutch Volt chapter, and I'm honored to be your chair this evening. And I will make sure, together with my co-host, to let this GA proceed as smoothly as possible, of course. And you might recognize my face from the stage before in the GA in Lisbon or from the Dutch elections. And as I said, I will not host this evening together. I have my co-host, Daniel Silva and Ines Bravo Figueiro. Thank you, who will introduce themselves as well to you. Daniel?
Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel. I'm the General Secretary of...
hear you.
You cannot hear me? Ines, go.
Yes, go.
Okay. So I am Daniel, the General Secretary of Volt Luxembourg for timekeeping. So I will be displaying messages on my background so people know that their time is running out.
And I'm Ines from Volt Portugal. I was our national candidate in the last national elections here in Portugal, and I also coordinated the development of the Moonshot program for the European elections. And today I'll be helping out with moderation and Q&A.
Thank you. And to make sure that we have everything on paper, so the minutes of this GA, the minute taker of this GA will be Lou Messiaen. She will record the minutes of the General Assembly via the YouTube stream and is a designated minute taker in accordance of Article 13 of the statutes and Article 2.1.3.8 of the internal regulations. That was an official sentence. Then we go back to the agenda. We have an opening speech of our co-presidents, followed by the presentation of our new MEP preparation team on the negotiations. Then we will have a presentation from the strategy team, and that will be followed by a Q&A. Then another presentation of the treasurer on the financials on 2023. This will be followed by Q&A, and there will be a voting opened, and there will be a presentation of the internal audit committee and also Q&A. So I mentioned two things, voting and Q&As. What does it actually mean? If you have been a member for more than 30 days, you have voting rights, and you can find your link to the task form in the email that has been sent to you. There have been multiple emails sent. The last one is called Join Us Tonight for the annual GA Volt Europa. It's sent this afternoon. Please, if you cannot find it, look everywhere in all your mailboxes. So both of your email accounts, like your Volt account and also your spam folders. And if you're still unable to locate the voting link, please call or email help@volteuropa.com. Next, we have also Q&As that will be followed by after the strategy presentation, the treasurer, the internal audit committee, and they will take approximately 10 minutes. Those questions can be submitted through the Google Form link, which is also in the email where you can find your voting link. To make sure that the questions, so you know how the questions will be answered, they will be addressed chronologically, and we will also take gender into account. So don't hesitate to send in your questions. And all questions addressed which have a clear connection to the presentation, they will direct it to the speaker. If there was not enough time to ask your question and it's still relevant, please don't feel like hesitated to email your question to the General Secretary Office. The email account is generalsecretary@volteuropa.com. You can also find it on the website. And those answers and including questions will be posted online after the GA. So please make sure all your questions will be answered no matter what. Then I will introduce our next speakers to open the GA officially, which are our co-presidents of Volt Europa, Francesca Romana Dontuono and Mels Klabbers, to the stage. Well, the floor is yours. Looking forward to your speeches.
Thank you very much. Welcome everyone to the General Assembly. I hereby officially open the General Assembly. We reached an important milestone for our movement. The last time we gathered at the GA, we had 1 MEP. Now we have 5. For the first time, Europe has a party with MEPs of different nationalities, all working together as one group towards the same ideas and goals for Europe. 5 MEPs who are already changing the way of doing politics in the European Parliament, who represent not only the citizens of their own country, but all Europeans, who are ready to fight for a greener, more just, more safe, and more democratic EU from Portugal to Cyprus, from Sweden to Malta. 5 MEPs who are committed to Volt's values and committed to represent you.
Hi, everyone. So the road to get to this result was long, and it involved so many of you. Boy, if you think about the past 3 years, so much has happened. We went from a completely volunteers-driven Volt Europa to a team of full-timers that peaked at 16 people. We professionalized and scaled up the organization on so many fronts. We achieved representation in 8 countries around the EU, including 3 national parliaments at one point. We had elected officials joining us as a testimony to the relevance of our political proposition is gaining. This includes Alexandra Talides from the Cyprus Parliament and Sophie in 't Veld from the European Parliament. And to both of them, I want to extend my deepest appreciation and gratefulness for having taken the chance on this crazy bunch, investing their reputation on something bigger than immediate political gain, but in a vision. We gave a more clear political direction to the party with our campaign, with our debates, with the prominent guests we have at our general assemblies and with which we engage in debates, with the creation of our program, the jewel in the crown of our party. And do you want to know why I define it as such? Because this is, I think, the program is always a bit a thing for the geeks, right? But in a world that shift towards the far right, to politics that calls for a strong man to be in charge of everything, we had the guts of making our vision a shared one, accessible to citizens and residents, and therefore co-created with them. How powerful is that?
Yes. In April, our campaign for the European Parliament elections of 2024 was officially launched in Brussels. All those who are present, either online or in person, have witnessed a historic moment. The moment in which a party not only envisioned, but made a concrete proposal for a transnational list of candidates. One in which all European citizens could see themselves represented, regardless of nationality. It was a long way until the elections. Not always an easy one. For sure, one with lessons learned. It was an exciting, rewarding, and empowering journey. We want to thank all of you who invested their time, money, and energy to make it happen. Even if you dedicate just 1 hour of your time to this cause, you made an impact, and we thank you for that. It's because of you and our collective effort that we are enabling to make this happen. We believe that the hard work you all put in paid off. Despite not achieving our goals in every chapter, Anna, Nela, Damian, Reinier, and Kai will be our voice in Europe. Our voice independently of where you live or where you are from. Now, as you know, we concluded the negotiations for the European Parliamentarian Group, and you voted massively for Volt to join the Greens and EFA. With this decision, we will be representing almost 10% of the members of this group, demonstrating the impact we can have in shaping this group towards our vision for a more progressive Europe. one that is committed to democracy and social justice, while also being open to innovation and new ways of thinking about our economy and how it shapes our society. By the way, in case you didn't know, we saw the first of waves we are starting to make, reflected in the fact that at the press conference announcing our membership in the Greens, we have over 70 journalists present. That is a change if I have ever seen one.
So besides being enthusiastic about our results because of what it means for us as an organization and because it represents our reward for our work we all put in it, we also want to take a moment to reflect on what it means to have participated in these elections from a broader perspective. The far right now represents 25% of the seats in parliament. This means that 1 in 4 members of the parliament sees Europe as a white fortress in which migrants are, at the very best, an economic disposable asset. It means that 1 in 4 members of the parliament do not support equal rights for LGBTIQ plus people, for women, for people with disability. It means that 1 in 4 members of the parliament will most likely not support shared economic resources to invest in better education, in better healthcare, and not only for the privileged few, but for all. It means that 1 in 4 members of the parliament, and I really want you to think about this number, is in denial about climate change or slowing down the efforts we desperately need to make to seriously tackle it. For years, scientists have warned us about it. But now it's here. Now, these very days, reports are flooding the news. The 1.5 degree limit is already exceeded. We are already now in deep troubles. The disruption that climate change is bringing is not something that the next generation will have to deal with, but is something that will affect your life, your parents' life, your friend's life, and the life of everyone around you, the people that you love. And they don't care. 1 in 4 members of the parliament doesn't care about this. As 2 wars enrage on the border of Europe, 1 in Ukraine and 1 in Israel-Palestine, we must be the resistance, the voice that is able to stand strong in support of the rule of law, the voice that is able to do 2 incredible things at the same time. Stand up against bullies, while also seek a path of reconciliation, remembering that the people and their governments are not the same thing. So it is crucial to have voices like those of our 5 MEPs in the European Parliament to fight these extremists. Actually, the cool thing is that we already scored a goal in our fight against the far right. On election night, actually, because both in the Netherlands and in Germany, a few thousands of votes took a seat away from Alternative for Germany, AfD, the far-right German party, and the PVV, the far-right Dutch party, respectively. So for 1,000 votes, we are elected and they're not. We encourage all of you to tell this story to all the people that voted for you and that supported votes in your country, independently if you gained a seat or not. Because even if you didn't, their vote is not lost. Their vote now fills the voice of the elected officials that work for votes and for the entirety of our pan-European community.
Yeah. Speaking of which, we wanted to conclude our message by really giving a shout out to all these chapters that participated in the elections and did not score a seat. Building a successful political party is an ongoing process and not something that just takes shapes out of thin air. In 2019, Volt Netherlands put a lot of effort into the campaign for the European Parliament, but it was not enough for a seat. At the time, it felt like a disappointment and a failure. But looking back, it was the stepping stone for everything that came after. In fact, shortly after, we elected to the national parliament, then the local councils, then the provincial councils, and even the Senate. Now Volt is represented on every level in government in the Netherlands. This is what our mission is about. We invite you to go back and reflect on everything that you have built. What is our next step? What are the lessons learned? How can you capitalize on what you have built so far as to start your journey and maybe elect a representative in a city council, in a regional one, or even a national one. This is also what this GA is about, thinking about the future and what is going to be our strategy for the next 5 years. So we invite you to stay tuned for this session. But more than that, we ask you to actively engage with our community on the ground. It is crucial that we engage as many people as possible in this process, so we can collectively work on the best strategy moving forward and shape our insights together.
Once again, thank you everyone for everything you have done for Volt in this campaign and throughout the party's history. And if you are a new member just joining our movement, welcome. And thank you for taking the time to fight for a better Europe together with us. We are looking forward to meeting each and every one of you at our next in-person General Assembly in Tirana, in Albania, on the 23rd and 24th of November. We invite you all to join to make sure that Europe is not something that happens in Brussels and then is released to citizens, but that we take it and create it together in every corner of this beautiful land of ours. So have a great General Assembly, everyone.
Thanks and bye-bye.
So we are back on the stage again. Our hosts so far have been very on time, which is very good for a good GA to carry on. And now I have the honor to introduce our next speaker. The next speaker will be Teun Jansen, who was the third candidate on the Dutch list for the European elections. So he was winning the bronze medal and not getting in to Parliament, but we did get these 2 spots. So he will has been working hard. He was part of the team, the new MEP preparation team that had the ongoing discussions, and he will introduce that to you.
Amazing. And I see we have Reinier as well tuning in from the train. So he can give you, at the end of my little contribution, a bit of insights into the practice of how this is all gone. You reminded me, Dani, a little bit, you said bronze medal about this meme that circulated after the elections where you had all the German parties and Volt was like number 10th. And that was the one celebrating the most, like popping the champagne bottle. That's also how I felt as number 3, because I'm very happy Reinier and Anna made it in. I have a bit of, because this is a very positive GA, where we're very happy actually that everything went so well and that we managed to get 5 people elected. And just checking, by the way, if you can see my screen, I think so, right now or not. Just double checking this. Okay. Okay, no screen. Okay, no worries. You know what? I'm just going to wing it like this. So basically, one of the reasons, I guess, why we also did so well is that we were very well prepared. So you might have heard a little bit on Workplace or mouth to mouth about this NEMAP, this mysterious NEMAP. It's an acronym. It stands for New Members of the European Parliament Preparation. You might be thinking that's a cheesy acronym. It is, but then we also considered using IKEA, incoming, I think, was it again, impact kit for the European Assembly. So it could have been a lot worse. Anyway, the main point is that we were thinking with a group of people, I'll get later to who they were, how do we empower all of the candidates that are running, which were hundreds, of course, across Europe in those 15 countries, to run a great campaign and to hit the ground running once they were elected. So once they did get into office, those merry 5 of them, how can they be prepared as well to basically run a good campaign? And I see now my presentation is showing. That's very interesting. So I'm going to go along and see if it actually updates. Very good, it does. Why? Because in the end, you can prepare for in many ways. But the main thing to keep in the back of your mind is, okay, what are you preparing for? And at the end of the day, it's how many seats you have. So depending if we managed to get 2 MEPs elected, 4 or 6, we had more or less impact, more or less ways to also leverage the seats we had in negotiations, of course, with the various European parties, with the Greens and Renew, right? So that was always in the back of our mind. It's how to maximize this impact with this very cheesy acronym that we came up with to hit the ground running the best way possible, so that from day one we were the best prepared. And I can tell you, I guess this is not a secret anymore, but basically we were one of the first delegations to actually send the preferences as well for the committees and the positions. So we were very critical amongst ourselves, but actually in the end, we were one of the most prepared delegations ever in the history of the European Parliament. So something went well. Who were they? You might be thinking, who the hell are these people? Basically, a year ago in the summer of 2023, a bunch of different conversations took place amongst members of Volt Netherlands, Volt Germany, other chapters. There were very spontaneous conversations which basically came to the same point. How do we prepare as well as possible for these elections? Not just with trainings, not just with preparations, but also that once basically the elections are over, they know what to do straight away, right? So it had to do with content, with skills, with all kinds of things. They were very spontaneous conversations. These people basically came together, and over time we got in touch also with Joe from the team of Damian and Damian himself, and it became over time more formalized. So we also got a mandate from the European Board and the Country Council a few months ago, and basically the assignment was given was, let's prepare the candidates as much as possible, and also do a bit of the pre-work basically for the negotiations with the various groups in the European Parliament, so that then on the 11th of June they could start working straight away. So everyone contributed a little bit of the piece of the puzzle. We all did our different ways. Some were more focused on finding the links between the various groups within Volt Europa. Others were more focused on content, on policy. But we all did our part basically. And the main thing that we did was, I already sort of alluded to this, but three main things. On the one hand, trainings. So we had, maybe you remember this, for all of the members, these Run for Volt trainings, which are basically about what is the European Parliament, what will you be doing if you get elected? So to make people excited for it, but also to make them able to run a good campaign based on having a bit more EU knowledge than your average European Parliament candidate. So that was one. We also had a trainings, me and Joe, about the general functioning of the European Union. So how does decision-making work? Where are you actually placed in the European Parliament once you get elected? And we had some very important trainings as well with a lot of cooperation. Thank you very much with the policy shapers. I know Ines is also here today. They helped us a lot with making the link between our very elaborate moonshot program and sort of political positioning for the candidates. So what is happening in the Euro bubble the next 5 years? What kind of political capital does that give you once you're elected? Basically, what is possible, what is not, based on our full priorities. And we also plan a few trainings for after the election. So think about negotiation trainings from negotiation experts. Think about intercultural communication trainings. How do you manage information? All of this stuff. And the second part was, how do we make sure that once they get in, basically the preferences of the elected MEPs and the general trends in the European Union and the priorities of Volt are as much aligned as possible in a kind of triangle, right? So that meant having a lot of conversations, asking a lot of questions, and being in touch with a lot of members as well. And in the end, we had very concrete steps. Like, for example, we distributed a questionnaire to the likely candidates to be elected, where they could express their preferences for committees, for delegations, for other things. And we basically included that in an overall analysis, especially me and Joachim, about, okay, where do we actually want to propose to Renew and to Greens, which committees we would like to have as a whole. So we had a bunch of this basically strategy sessions, also one physically in the Brussels campaign kickoff. And in the end, that became an overall sort of package. And I want to show you a little bit of the sort of tip of the, how do you say this, the veil. It's a Dutch expression of how that looked like. I'm not going to show you everything, but here, for example, is a screenshot from the preferences expressed by the candidates from that questionnaire, where they would like to work in which committees. So we got this and we looked at this and we saw, okay, there's a big preference, obviously, for example, reform, right? For a better, stronger EU. So that was for us important to understand. This would be a big priority for the candidates. Same with, for example, the green transition, with climate change, with the economy, right? Another one was, for example, we asked them, what are your preferences for delegations? So if you get elected, where would you like to work? Which regions? So the United States, obviously, because of the link with technology. Think about the Maghreb region because of migration, and the enlargement countries, especially, were big on the priority list. So we took that into account. But also, obviously, we had a lot of conversations with external experts, internal experts involved about what will the next few months and next years look like? So what do we actually have to prepare for? So what will be the European trends where we can actually make our priorities come to reality? Because we have 80 pages worth of ideas, but only some of them will probably get the majorities required to make them pass and to show to our voters that we can actually have positive impact, right? So there was a lot of conversations as well with outsiders, with documents, basically. We cross-checked it with, okay, what are actually the competences of the European Parliament? So are you actually legally empowered to make legislation on, and where not? And also in which committees actually are more powerful than others. So we also had a bit of this sort of, the consideration of where can you actually have the most influence in the back of our mind. And we cross-checked that with basically a bunch of strategic priorities coming in from the European Commission, the Council, other institutions. I told you, right, I'm just going to lift a tip of the veil. There were hundreds of slides like this. I just want to show you that hopefully also you trust us, that we had a lot of work spent on making sure that was balanced, that we had as much outside input as possible, and that it reflected, also what the Volt priorities were. And that was the final thing, because we had so much. We had a moonshot. We had all kinds of campaign promises. So we also had to look at, okay, what do we actually want to prioritize in that big campaign program? And what did the MEPs actually want to make it into actual concrete legislation? So then in the end, all came together, and then I'll round off into a big package of how do we make sure that whatever we come up with maximize the ability to shape legislation, to actually work on it because there's competences for it, because the MEPs also like them. It's important that people have fun while they actually do work for 5 years straight, right? And that they have also their own expertise and experience in it. And that as Volt on these areas, we can have the most impact in terms of also winning elections. So if we manage to make a lot of impact on fishery nets, okay, maybe that's not the most, politically interesting topic to also make noise about. So that was also included. And in the end, we had this big, elaborate decision-making tree where all the candidates were also included in, and the board and the country council. And that's what the result was. Basically, if you look at this, in the end of the day, we had a bunch of estimations. So we were hoping to at least have 2. That was the pessimistic scenario. We were praying for 8. And at the end of the day, we were perfectly, if you can see that, in the middle. So in a way, we did our homework well, because the medium scenario came through. And I think maybe Reinier, if he still has time for it, can give you also a bit of an idea, if he's still around, about actually how that looked like in practice, right? So all of this was around a year of work by a bunch of amazing people. Special credit to Joe, to Krista, to Rijk as well, to Marianne, Joost, everyone who made it become reality. And I hope we have your trust, and that now it shows that the MEPs could hit the ground running, actually, because again, I think we've been hearing in Brussels in the bubble that we were probably the most prepared delegation of all. So that was good to see. And let's see what they do with this. But maybe if Reinier is around, he can give you a bit of an idea of what happened after the 11th of June, right? Because it was all before, of course, the elections, and then they came into Brussels. So what happened next, right? How did those negotiations look like? What did we get out of it? And in the end of the day, we can celebrate, I think, that 87% of us voted for the Greens, to join the Greens as a group, which happened a few days ago. So yeah, I hope you learned a little bit from this process. And then at the end of the day, we're all doing this as one movement. So thank you very much. And I think we can all be very happy with 5 seats.
Hey, thank you so much, Toon, for this presentation. So, everyone at home, are you enjoying the GA so far? Can I have some purple hearts in the chat for our amazing speakers? Thank you. Right now, we're going to have a presentation on the first hypothesis for Volt's strategy until 2029. We will have with us Sebastian Lemenzig, who is currently leading Volt Europa strategy team. He is a German national and a member of Volt Darmstadt. He has a background in business management. With him, we'll also have Janko Heineken, who is a non-executive board member at Volt Europa. He lives in Bonn and has a postdoctoral research at the Institute of Finance and Statistics. Together, they have a very in-depth understanding of how to analyze the market, stakeholders, and trends. And this is what they used to give us a prediction for our political strategies. The strategy team, amongst others, provides a hypothesis for what our upcoming strategy will be, and will give strategic advice to the European board and their functional teams to help them create their strategy, and can also help national teams with their strategy. The team created a hypothesis for our strategy for the next 5 years, and they want to present it to the members today, eventually to get their views on it. The team has worked hard over the last months to get insights from various stakeholders to formulate this hypothesis, and are now ready to bring this to the next phase, feedback from the members. I just want to let everybody know as well that the session will have a Q&A at the end, so be sure to start sending your questions over the link provided. So without further ado, I invite on stage Sebastian and Janko.
Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here today to be able to present one of the many projects that we were working on over the last couple of weeks and months. But before I start, I would like to use the chance to thank all of the people who were responsible for making this historic GA reality. Especially thank you, George, Tetske, Federico. Thank you so much, Lou. Thank you, Maurice and Rieu. And as a former European events co-lead, I would also like to use this stage now to encourage all of you who are listening, who have some time left and who would really like to have a positive impact in this organization, to join the European events team, as it is one of the most exciting teams that we have. But now let's talk about our Volt Europa 2029 strategy draft. 2 days ago, Janko and I shared with all of you our first 2029 strategy draft paper. And today we would like to use the chance to, first of all, tell you what we have done over the last couple of weeks and months, to show you and our plan for the next weeks and months, but also give you an initial summary of this paper. And this is something that I would like to invite all of you, please read the paper and also provide us with your feedback and your thoughts on that. So with the end of our 2024 European campaign, we also come to an end of the 2024 strategy. And this was the reason why we thought, okay, it is now time to really think about the next steps and really start to create a plan for the next years for this organization. So what we did as a first step was, of course, to have a look at our 2024 strategy. And as a first decision, and this is something that we would also like to propose here today, is that we would like to use the key outcomes out of that 2024 strategy as a foundation for the 2029 strategy. We think it doesn't make sense to really think about why we exist, what we want to achieve, but we should rather, with this 2029 strategy, focus on really delivering what we want to achieve. So what we think and would like to propose is that we stick with our EU-utopia, a united federal Europe where everyone has equal chances to fulfill their unique potential. We strive to achieve the highest standards of human, social, environmental, and technical development together. The second part was the vision that was already created some years ago. Volt leads by example to foster a united and federal Europe. Our mission, a united federal Europe where everyone has equal chances to fulfill their unique potential. Our shared challenges, our 5+1. We will also not start discussions about our identity again. And we would also stay with our call to action, namely empowering people to change politics and unlock Europe's potential together. Therefore, we will also propose that we stay with the strategy staircase. For those of you who haven't seen it before, this is some kind of visualization of the most important goals with, for example, the vision for European society, our mission, and also the vision for the European democracy. But on the way, we also have some key goals that we need to tackle, namely becoming a Euro party, getting our EP elections in all 27 countries, get 23 MEPs to really create our own EP faction, and also get national and local MPs on the way. But What we've done now was, well, we identified that this should be the starting point, but over the last couple of weeks and months, we had, I think, 20 to 30 one-on-one interviews with people from the European level, from chapter level, with elected officials to really define a list of questions, of things that we definitely need to address with this new strategy process. And we also created draft answers based on the inputs, and also several feedback loops that we already included to come to this first summary that we're presenting today here, where we're sharing the hypothesis at this GA with the main goal of getting your initial feedback to begin gathering suggestions. Over the summer, over the next couple of weeks and months, we would like to further develop this plan. So our plan is to really start the discussions with the chapters, start the discussions with the functional teams to operationalize all of those key big ideas that we have laid out in this paper. And we would like to create a more extensive plan with really specific timelines, as well as key performance indicators to then, of course, also derive our budget from that. All of that is planned to be presented in November at our GA, where we would like to have a vote on all of this, as well. The budget is, of course, part of this, and then capture a final feedback that we would like to include to then really start to implement all of that at the end of the year. And what's really important, and I would like to stress this out again, is that all of this is a first draft, and as you can see directly here on this timeline, it is the first part of this whole timeline, and we would like to refine strategy with input from leadership and members along the way continuously. So what were the main questions that we identified for the new strategy, and that we also try to answer already here with this paper? We identified 9 key pillars that we also already try to answer. The first thing is the path to impact. We should definitely make a more specific plan on what the best ways are for all of us to achieve Europe-wide change. The second part is the policy focus. What are the core political topics that we want to promote? The third part is the question of coordination. How do we want to organize ourselves here, especially between Volt Europa and the chapters? We have the question of European leaders, namely how visible our European leaders should be across all of the chapters. The question of geography, on which chapters should we focus the resources, the limited resources that we have. Funding, what are the priority paths for funding Volt Europa and the chapters? The question of when we should run for elections in the chapters. One key thing, and this is also something that we already saw in our staircase, namely the Euro Party. How can we manage the risk of becoming a Euro Party? And lastly, one of the most important pillars, of course, the membership part. How do we see our members? So before I give the floor now to Janko, I would like to summarize the key things of this first part. Namely, this is the first draft that we're presenting here, and we're starting the process now with getting all of your feedback first, of course. What we would like to propose is that we take all of the key results of the 2024 strategy as a foundation for this 2029 strategy. And we would now like to really get hands on projects defined based on all those high-level answers. So, Janko.
Yes, thank you so much. One question: do you have the slides up? Actually, are they there? Or do I need to share them? Okay, should I share them?
I think it should be fine.
Yes. So, can we see them now? Can we see the slides? Yes, okay. Thank you so much. Let me get on the content of the presentation. So, essentially, there we go. So, the first thing that is very important for us is that the community is that everything that we do is community driven. So we can do nothing without the help of our volunteers. Everything that we do is only effective if it comes from the movement, if it comes from the community, if it's driven by that. This is really, really important, and this is why this is a bracket that goes around all topics. So the first part, and I think it is first because it is one of the most important, is what is our path to impact as Volt Europa? And there we found that there's a big desire for the European level to essentially do its European level homework. So focus on the European infrastructure and topics that benefit every member, and even beyond the membership, every citizen of Europa. And there are 3 topics that we want to invest much more here, and it's kind of the backbone of our European structures. The first of which is our community. So things like onboarding, things like tech, things like trainings, and so on. So this is very, very important, and we want to improve this a lot because every member benefits from that. The second one is we see the need that there should be a much stronger communication of Volt Europa. So building a communication team for Volt Europa and having our unique perspective as a European party communicated directly through that. So some people think that it's enough if just the larger teams communicate and everyone else is kind of just taking this. But we think we have a European audience, and we have to especially specifically focus on that and cater to that. The third part is we need to create European spaces. So this means, for example, improving our GAs a lot, providing additional political events, providing a tech platform which we can talk on everywhere in Europe, so the workplace replacement, introducing a European exchange call, and so on. So really creating added value on the European level of European spaces that every member benefits from. On the policy focus, we are proposing that we should be a bit narrower, not focus on many topics, taking the topic of the day and communicating a lot on this, and then tomorrow on something else. But everything should be viewed from the lens of European integration and the related challenges that come with democratic European integration, which are our core topic that people identify Volt Europa with. On coordination between the European level and the chapters, we find it really, really important that we finish the work on a rule book for coordination, which was already started under kind of the title MOU a while ago, then was put on the back burner. So we think this is really, really important that we get it done. So this coordination rule book, it has to be an agreement on fees, on tech, on community, on how we deal with chapters that maybe go outside of our mutually agreed rules, but first we need rules, right? So this work is very, very important, and we have to continue it, and we have to finish it. Generally, the view that we have is that Volt Europa, because we have a European brand, defends and grows and motivates the European brand image. But we also are very aware of that expansion can only happen on the ground. So the European level cannot just point on a country on the map and say, this is where it's going to happen, and then we have a beautiful team there. This is just not how it works, and we have to acknowledge that. On European leaders, in quotation marks, so people we want to put more in the focus of our communication, more as spokesperson, and also promote as such. The first question, should we have them? And we answer them with yes. Second question, who should they be? And our answer is our elected officials, especially MEPs, because they have this European mandate, and our co-presidents, who are specifically the spokespeople of our organization. On geography, so geographic focus and when to run for elections, so let's combine these two. Basically, in the past, Volt Europa had the kind of concept to tend to a lot of small chapters, try to raise them all from the ground, and try to give everybody everything, kind of. So we see a great benefit to, while strengthening the European backbone, which benefits all members, to consolidate geographically a bit and try to focus resources which are very rare on the European level, trying to focus them very precisely to where it has the most effect to reach our European goals. And this includes both a kind of raising the teams approach, where we say it makes more sense to do something for everything than to find a very specific solution for every chapter, and also when to run and when to support elections. We should be very strategic about this and be very wary about not wearing ourselves too thin. On funding, I will do this together with funding, Europarty, and membership. We see the point here that there are three big ways to get funding. The third one are large donors. So far in the past, Porto Europa has relied a lot on large donors, which can be very risky, but we want to continue to do it. But there are certain risks here, namely that they will extract some political concessions, or they will try it, and we will not allow it, and it will be stressful, or it will be risky and volatile because they can withdraw their donations. So large donations are great, but they're not very reliable. The Europarty is another really great deal if we get it, but to get to the requirements, we need a certain amount of delegates, which we currently don't have. So the question is, should we get somehow people into the boat, which is also a risky strategy. It can work out if they're the right people. It can be terrible if they're the wrong people. So our proposal is to have the Europarty registration as soon as possible, but be really careful about how we're doing this and do a lot of due diligence before getting maybe some defectors from other parties to do so. But the last point is that the gold standard, the holy grail of party financing, is our membership fees. And we currently see that membership fees to Porto Europa are very, very low. So on average, they are less than €1 per member. We want to harmonize these membership fees a bit. So maybe raise the average a bit, but make sure that also in different chapters, members don't pay vastly different fees, which is the case currently. And it's not about being rich or poor as a chapter, if you think that. Exactly. And the last point on membership rights, we also have the similar situation that membership rights are very different between different chapters. So members of some chapters get a much fuller experience of Porto Europa for their membership and their membership fees than others. And this is something that also in the context of coordination, we want to harmonize. All right. So as Sebastian said, we want to put this directly into practice by tying it to the budget and tying it to kind of the program of the functional teams. And here we find it very, very important, given that we just said that the following teams are volunteer teams are strengthened a lot, which is events, which are already how thin they are. And here we really need to improve. And community, which is a similar. We want a lot from these teams, but they are basically very, very, very few people in these teams. So this definitely has to change. So these are examples, right? So we're working on this, as Sebastian says, with the functional teams. Another one that is obviously following from these proposals is that we need to build a very professional communication office. So one best practice, for example, is for Germany. They tried a long time to build a great communication team. For a long time, they didn't see a lot of success. Then now they're seeing the success, well-deserved, and seeing a lot of good feedback. So this is the level that we should be aiming for. We need to finish this coordination rulebook with the chapters. So this is supremely important, as we mentioned. We need to have a program for European spaces to connect Europeans across our organization and beyond. That is doing this much more than we do now. For example, by doing all of these things that are listed here. Fourth, we need a very tight strategy on the Europarty, which reaches out to all the chapters, looking what we can do there to meet the requirements, but with the necessary due diligence. And lastly, we need to think about a new policy process that takes into account the chapters, the members all over Europe, and is in line with kind of this idea of having European spaces, having everybody come together to create European politics. All right, so sorry for the bit of confusion in the presentation, but now, as a last point, we really ask you, so a lot of people have already given input and feedback, but we would really like for you to give feedback. So we have this feedback form. Please take the link, go to the feedback form. You can find it also on Workplace in my post. On Workplace, go to the feedback form, fill it out. You have an open field here. You can write whatever you want. Please do so. This is the most structured way to give feedback on the policy. You can also do it in any other way. But this is the most structured way, and it would be great if you could do that. We really need the feedback from the members. We will also solicit it later on, but this is the best way. Just go there, fill it out right now. Read the strategy paper, of course, so the slides are just a summary. Read the strategy paper, give feedback on every sentence if you want. We will read it and we'll take it into account. Thank you so much. And we will now have a Q&A session, I think. Thank you so much. Sebastian, can you? We're not sure. I can't hear you. I don't know if other people can. I don't think so.
Okay, does it work now?
Yeah, now it works. Sorry.
All right.
The tech today is,
Interesting. Okay, but before we start with the questions that we are getting live, I think it makes sense that we also show that we're seeing all of your feedback. Some people already used the chance to provide us with feedback in the feedback form provided. And one of the questions that we got was, if we decide on an all or nothing support for chapters, then how can we ensure a transparent decision-making process for this support? Janko.
Yeah, so it's very important to state that in this strategy, so a bunch of people ask us questions like this, like give an exact number to when a chapter is at a certain stage of development or potential and so on. And I completely agree, there should be numbers. There should be also a holistic perspective that goes beyond numbers, but numbers are very important. But the idea of this strategy that we're presenting is to be high level and point us into the right direction. So basically saying that this, obviously, it should be evaluated, but it depends on the exact case and the context at hand. But certainly there are numbers to think about. And what we are saying is that we should strategically think about where we invest and which chapters we need to collaborate on the European level with, on which topic and so on. So already this is not uncontroversial. So the exact numbers, you will probably not get them from us, but there should be some.
Yes. Second question that we also already got before the GA was, what about harmonization of the IT membership system? So also here, as already outlined before, all of this is, first of all, a high-level strategy, a high-level plan, but well, especially this IT membership system, this is also something that we see as a responsibility on the European level. It makes sense to have projects like that can be offered to all of our chapters on the European level, but this will be certainly part of that and will be discussed. And maybe a third question from before we also start with the questions that we got here was, what is the strategy to maximize the impact of Volt's 5 MEPs? Maybe you can elaborate on that, Janko.
Yeah. So the general idea, as I mentioned before, of this strategy proposal is that we propose that we want to Vote Europa should maximize the benefit of everything that we do for all our European members. So this includes the work that we do in the European Parliament. And to make this work as useful for a European kind of audience, we really need this European communication team that and we don't think it's enough that just, let's say, for example, the Dutch and the German team communicate about it because it's can be very audience specific. But generally, I have to say that this strategy would not really change whether we had 5 MEPs or 2 MEPs. So obviously more are better, and we're very happy about 5, but it does not essentially change the strategy. I think the strategy would be the same even if we would have had 2 MEPs.
All right, thank you so much, both Janko and Sebastian. We have gotten some questions, and luckily we have some time to answer, so let's try and go over all the questions that we have received. The first question actually comes from Netherlands, and they ask, will there be a way to be more engaged with the party without constant participation?
So
Yeah, well, I
think
I can maybe start with that. So what we also already elaborated on was that we want to do not forget about the community part. It is one of the most important elements that we need to focus on, and this was the feedback that we got from many people. Yes, we are a party, we are a political party, and we need to be well set in that area. However, the community part is very, very important here, and we need to, and this was also already outlined as one of the key projects that we can already start working on, creating those European spaces where we are able to have this reflected. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. The next question comes to us from Luxembourg, so not far away from where I'm sitting. So can you give us an estimate of how much do you expect the strategy to change between now and November?
It can change completely. It can change zero. It depends completely on the feedback of people. It depends on the it depends on our discussions with, for example, the function leads on the budget and so on. But I can also tell you that we would not propose what we propose if we didn't think that this is something that is the right thing and many members would benefit from and are generally agreeing with. But we expect that there will be a lot of discussions, and that is exactly what we want. And it can change completely if we say, okay, we've gone completely off the rails here on certain points, then we will have the first ones, I think, to change things. And we really want to have this flexibility, and that's why this is a proposal, and the members are very free to say their opinion, and we will take it very, very seriously. So we're not married to this at all.
I'm glad to hear that, because the next question coming from Germany is, will we pay more attention to inclusion or disability policy?
I mean, I can answer it to yes, I hope so. And this is part of both community and events investment. So we have, for example, in the past had difficulties with providing at our events enough inclusion, which is simply a resource question. I mean, I'm sure some people would say it's very easy, but I think it's really, if you do it on a shoestring, it can be hard to really have that on the first thing of your mind. But we really need this. And I think the idea of community is the same. Like, we need much more investment, much more structure in our administration to assure that we can, for example, do these things that get much more people involved because they're more inclusive. Like, things, for example, think of a childcare at our events. This is one example. So in Germany, we often have that. On the European events, still usually not. And this is something where, with more resources, we can do that, volunteer based. Just we need to organize it. It's a question of resources, and that is a great inclusive measure, because then people with children can participate more easily, and there are many people with children.
I think it's also a perfect question that really can be used to show what different parts we have in this general overall strategy, right? Because this is a question that is super fundamental. It's a foundation of everything that we are doing, and this is reflected therefore also in our vision and mission. So what we presented directly in the beginning, those outcomes that we had in the 2024 strategy, this is a foundation that we also want to have reflected in all of the more operationalized parts. And here we have it reflected in our vision there, where we show that we want to have same opportunities for everyone, which then needs to be reflected as outlined in community, as in our policy, as in more and more projects that we then outline afterwards. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so the next question comes from Germany. And what are the concrete steps that we are taking to harmonize the political cultures between chapters when it comes to our assembly's policy development or votes are run? So, yeah.
Yeah, very good question. So on the policy question, I mentioned the new policy process, but this is about harmonization. So kind of how do we keep people politically in check? And I think there a joint communication team is very, very crucial, and getting these resources of the kind of the European backbone together, because this allows us to get everyone together and tell them, okay, maybe this policy is not in line, but let's have events, let's discuss it. And also at our GAs, if we have more resources for our GAs, we could do political discussion in a much, much broader way, right? We could do things like European events, only talking on policy, like, for example, political assemblies, as we did it last year. Ines organized, for example, like this. We should have much more of this. This is really what is our added value as Volt Europa. And this can help to align politically. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. And actually, we now have a question on geographical consolidation of resources throughout Europe coming from the Netherlands. And it's for Janko, and it says that you mentioned it would be allocated based on where it can be most effective. And so this person is wondering what the criteria for most effective is. Is it just about helping the most people? Would it be a case-by-case basis?
Yes, I mean, as I said before, we are not giving people here an exact definition of what most effective means, or which number tells us what is most effective. But we say there should be a number, and this is relevant. It's important to think about this strategically. For example, if we think about these kind of questions, what could be relevant is investing into an election that could give us a delegate that is relevant for Euro Party registration. That is very strategic goal. It could be that we see that there is a country team that has really a lot of potential, and again, potential is vague, but has the potential because of the people who are there, because of the situation, to grow into a recognized political party in this country very quickly. For example, what we saw in Cyprus. And then we really say, okay, this country, we really have to make sure they are as close to the European level as they can be, so they can really put this into practice, and while keeping the brand of Volt Europa strong and alive and represented in their country. So these are just examples, but I think these are the right examples.
So the next question comes through us from Germany. What does it mean to become a Euro party in concrete terms, and how we,
So this is a very technical thing. There are explanations on workplace. Essentially, it's a legal status for European organizations that very few parties have. For example, the European People's Party and the European Socialist Party and so on. But you need a certain number of MEPs, and if you meet this requirement, you get a stable you get funding from the European budget, from the European Parliament. This is a great deal, especially for smaller organizations such as us. However, we have to meet the requirements. So it means something very precisely legally. It's not something we came up with. The Euro parties are a concept of European law.
And so also to provide you with a number. So in our case, we would talk about 500,000 to 1 million euros probably. So financially quite important, but it also would be a very historic step, and also for us, just in general, a very, very good thing for our reputation as well.
Yeah, it also gives us a lot of attention. So for example, at the European election we had right now, there were debates organized by the European Parliament and so on. And we were not invited, although we are a European party, and we got elected with more members than some other European parties. But we couldn't participate because they would only invite people from like official Europe parties. So that's what this status delivers for us, that we could, for example, be on the same stage as von der Leyen and put out our opinions on United Europe there.
All right, thank you so much. We're nearing the end, so we have 5 minutes left on this Q&A. And the question that I have is coming from the Netherlands. And is there something about the support to locally or regionally elected officials through a professionalization of the elected officials' office? And what about facilitating the organization of thematic communities within Volt Europa that will organize events and do all the things you mentioned at community and European spaces?
Yeah, so I think this is one of the goals that we try to address already. So with European spaces is part of that, but in general, and this also somehow addresses one of the previous questions, namely how do we ensure that we have policy discussions also across borders. We need to create those spaces where we really ensure that our elected officials communicate and that we have also some kind of synergies here in that area. But well, European spaces is exactly what this will and should address.
Yeah, we had a bit of debate. So basically, this is the second question. This is exactly what we're saying in point 1. We want to invest in exactly doing that. The first question on the elected officials office, we had a bit of a debate. Should we explicitly name the elected officials office as a team that we need to invest in, or should we just say this is part of kind of the community European spaces? This is still an open discussion. We might come back to this, so really give us feedback on what you think. Should the elected officials office be really mentioned as a kind of necessary team as European spaces or not, or in which way? Yeah.
Okay, and the next question is coming from Poland, and the person is asking, why aren't we using a centralized membership instead of having it managed per chapter?
That's a great question. That's a really good question. In fact, we have kind of a centralized membership. So all our members are members also of, well, not also, they are members of Volt Europa. So this Volt Europa ASBL, if you're watching this call, you're most likely a member of that and a member of a national chapter. So you have 2 memberships. The national chapters, it's hard to avoid having national political parties due to legal reasons. And even if there weren't legal reasons, we probably still would have national chapters, as most political parties have a breakdown on the lower level of wherever they're active, right? The question is, and this is what we're addressing in the strategy, what kind of rights and what kind of obligations come with this European membership? And here we see big differences depending on which chapter you're in. And there we're saying kind of, this is a bit weird. Let's maybe move away from that and say, if you're a member for Europa, you get the same rights and you have the same obligations wherever you are, and it doesn't matter whether you're in Poland or whether you are in the Netherlands. So we want to make the membership more European. But this is why the question is so good.
All right, thank you so much. We are about to conclude this Q&A. I just wanted to give a quick message to our YouTube chat, because we are receiving quite a lot of questions regarding subtitling. So right now, YouTube unfortunately does not offer live subtitling, and neither does the tool that we are using to hold this GA. Now, we, the organizing team, we understand that we need to do better on this front, but just so everyone is aware, the subtitles will be fully available once the live stream ends, and this is available for rewatching on YouTube. And with this, I think we can conclude our Q&A for the strategy team. Thank you so much, Janko and Sebastian, for being here at this GA, for talking about our strategy plans for 2029. And please, everyone, follow up on Janko's and Sebastian's request for feedback on the strategy.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
So that was a lively discussion, and we are gonna switch to a completely different topic. And luckily, already with me on stage is Christoph Quirin from the European Board as well. He's the treasurer, and he will give a presentation on the accounts of 2023. I'll first give you some background before you can kick it off. Why is this so important that we get annual review of our accounts? According to our statutes, each year the board draws up the annual accounts of the past accounting year and submit these for approval to the General Assembly together with the request to discharge the board from their liability for the policy pursued during the previous financial year. So this is a thing we need to do every year. That's why during this GA, you will be asked to put in 2 votes. And these will be opened after the presentation and the Q&A. So I will mention that again. There will be 2 votes. The first one is on the approval of the annual report of 2023. And in this part of the vote, you are asked to approve, and you can vote yes, no, or abstain. There will be a second one, the formal vote to discharge the board for the financial year of 2023. And in this part of the vote, you are asked if you approve the discharge of the board of directors from their liability for the policy pursued during the financial year of 2023. Again, you can vote yes, no, or abstain your vote. I will mention the exact time again, but it will be opened after the Q&As, approximately 2015 Central European summertime, and it will be closed tomorrow, 2015 Central European summertime, so the 27th of June. And in case you don't know anymore where your voting token is, it is in one of the emails. You have received a lot of emails from the Volt Europa last days. You can look for it, looking for Volt Europa GA. You can vote if you're a member for more than 30 days. And in case you have not received your voting token and you cannot find it, email help@volteuropa.org. Those were all the practical stuff. Let's continue, go to Christoph. Good luck. And I'm curious what you will tell us about the financials.
Thanks, Sylvia. Much appreciated, and thank you for the introduction. Good evening, everyone. I have the pleasure of being and I have the pleasure to also present to you the annual accounts for the year 2023. Before I do that, I want to take a moment to thank the previous treasurer, Johannes Heinrich, who was still fully in control of the last financial year and the year before that. So he has done an amazing job in keeping our financials healthy and sane, and also have to do the audit. So beginning of this year, he was still very much active and very much helped out with the audit of the external auditors. So I'm very grateful for him and his continued support in this function. Of the figures. Yeah, there I'm back. What we see in the management accounts is basically how we look at the numbers, which means that we have different cost categories than the ones that are in the annual accounts. So for instance, in our management accounts, you see general assemblies, you see IT costs, you see salaries and wages, you see event income, merchandise income, etc. And all these figures come to both the income and the total expenses that we had for the year. And based on what we presented during Q1, so the management accounts were finalized by the end of Q1, we predicted, and it's an important word because it's not the final one, we predicted our income to be around 270,000 euros. This was, however, before we did all the accruals, right? And so usually in accounting, that means that by the end of the year, you already need to foresee certain income that is already, which is expected to come in, which will come in the next year, but still is based on the year at hand. And the same holds for expenses. So expenses which are already in the system or in the year 2023, but you will only pay them in 2024 because, for instance, they came in on the 31st of December, which is absolutely feasible. And so based on that, together with the accountants that we have, and we have an external accountant, which makes it very easy to do the accounting, we basically make sure that all the invoices are sent to the system, and they then make the actual bookings for the accounting. And so we are always sure that the accounting is correct under Belgium GAAP. Now, after we finalize the management accounts together with the accountant and we do the accruals, we come to a final view of the annual accounts. And this is then also the annual accounts, which are then sent to the auditor, which is a third party, different than our accountant and different than ourselves, to do an audit. Basically, review everything what we and the accountant have done and see if we have done it well, if there are no material mistakes, and if the profit and loss presented in the annual accounts show a true and fair representation of the state of the organization. So on the next slide, you will see a shorthand. I mean, you probably also all have seen the report. So this is a shorthand of that report that was what was sent to all members together with the auditors report. So for a total income for the year was at 1,384,000, which is an amazing number. It's the largest number we've ever had, and it's mostly to do because we had a year where a lot of people worked really hard and focused on getting large donations in. So, for instance, as you might know or you might remember, we had a very large donation of 750,000 euros from one organization, the Dreamery Foundation. Again, this is the largest donation that we ever had. And it's also because of those generous donors that we were able to ramp up the costs that versus the previous years. So back in 2022, we had much lower expenses. For 2023, we started hiring people in ramp up for the elections that we just had. And so you see that the remuneration is one of the biggest expenses that we have, with 430,000 euros. This is basically everything that goes to the interns, to the presidents, or to the communication leads and the expansion managers. And not to forget, of course, our wonderful general secretaries. The other thing, of course, where we invested heavily is services and other goods. And this is a wide range of different accounts together. So the total of that was around 641,000 euros for the year. And this comprises, for instance, a large part on IT costs, but also a large part on the costs, for instance, for organizing the GA. So for instance, last year we had the GA in Paris, which was quite a costly affair. I think that was around 85,000 euros to organize that one GA. And then, of course, you have travel expenses, you have the expenses to support the national chapters. That's also in services that we provide. You have the communication, so the Facebook adverts, the meta adverts, I would say, and other things. And then a small part of other operating charges makes that for this year, we have an operational, or for last year, 2023, we have an operational profit of 312,000 euros, which was very good because that meant together with the reserves that we have already accumulated over 2022, so combined 2022 and 2023, which it meant that we started off the year 2024 with a high amount of liquidity, around roughly 500,000. And that gave us a very good position for the first 6 months in which we had to do the election. And that brings then also us to the auditor's opinion. So these are the numbers that are reviewed by the auditor. And the auditor works first according to a set guidelines in line with Belgian GAAP. And he found that nothing has come to his attention that causes them to believe that these accounts do not present fairly in all material respects the own funds and the financial position of the organization Vault Europe. So this is what we call an unqualified opinion, which means that basically we have done everything which is needed under Belgian GAAP. And that the profit that we present, so 311,000 from the previous slide, is a fair representation of the profit we made for 2023. This is also where you will vote upon if you agree with this statement of the auditors, if you agree with the P&L, so the profit and loss that we presented and the balance sheet that we presented, and therefore also discharge the board, the previous board, on the actions taken over last year. So that brings us to 2024. As I mentioned, we started off the year with a high liquidity position, but of course we already knew that we had quite some staff members and quite some expenses going forward, and therefore every month basically our liquidity decreased a bit. We had, however, have done a very amazing crowdfunding campaign this year, which totaled almost 104,000 euros. And I think this is the largest crowdfunding that we've done. And so I think my gratitude goes out to all the members that supported us during the crowdfunding campaign, during the many emails that we received with asking for donations. There you see it really, really helped. Then, of course, the membership income is also very different than last year, because normally we would receive membership income from both the Netherlands, Germany, and other countries, such as Italy, Portugal, or whatever. For this year, as you might remember from the budget discussion we had in Paris, this year there is no membership income coming to Vault Europe. Again, as we discussed in Paris, we decided this together at the GA because we wanted to allow the countries to maximize their campaign budgets. So that meant that the money that was normally going to Vault Europe would remain with the countries. And so for some countries, this really made a difference in their campaign budget. The membership income also changed, and I think I'm very proud to say this, because of the 5 MEPs we have now. Previously, in the last legislative cycle, Damien always supported us with 600 euros a month coming from his wage. Now that we have 5 MEPs, we hope, and we are in discussions and nearly finalizing those discussions, that the 5 MEPs will do the same. And based on the calculations that we've made, this will be roughly 4,400 euros per month. So for a full year, that would mean almost 50,000 euros, a bit more than 50,000 euros that our MEPs support the European level. Again, this is an amazing outcome and continues to build on the sustainability of the finances of Vault Europe. The other things you see is that, of course, in the January, we had a very high personnel expense. As you might remember, we had the unfortunate event that we had quite a bit of a shortfall of the final donation coming from the Dreamery Foundation. And as a result of the period January and December last year, we had to cut some costs. And this is basically what you see happening in January over to February. Then in March and April, because our communication team had needed some extra support, you see the costs increasing again. And now that we are nearing July, a lot of the contracts that we had are coming to an end. Again, we are very grateful for all the people that were able to support us in this campaign time. And that means that for the remainder of the year, until the membership fees come in again from the countries, we will run on a very slim staff with only 5 people being paid. The other costs that you see a lot of costs for events, you see a lot of costs for chapter support. Again, I think we've tried to maximize the potential that we had within the finances of Vault Europe to support the smaller chapters with, for instance, events, so sponsoring events in Cyprus, by giving additional support to Belgium and some support to Spain. We also had quite some travel expenses, of course, because all our people are on the campaign trail. The expansion managers were helping, supporting, building out different cities. And so you see that the costs also increased quite drastically versus last year. As a result, you see that now in the second half year, the costs will come back to a more normal level. And you probably see that we will continue decrease our liquidity. But hopefully, if we are not too far off with our forecast, we will end the year with around 50,000-60,000 euros in reserves, which is positive. But still, I'm a bit hesitant to say very positive, because of course 50,000, 60,000, if you see that our costs on a running basis are around 40,000, only gives us a month and a half of runway before we run out of cash in 2025. So as a conclusion, I think we have had a very eventful year, and a year which is not normal to date. In the second half year, we will come back to normalcy, and we will end the year still with sufficient liquidity to bring us to 2025 and to re-engage with the membership income. Then I think we can go to the next slide. If there's still time. There you go. So what we ask for you today is, of course, the votes. As I mentioned, do you approve the 2023 annual report, which is composed by the external accountant, Van der Lanot, and our internal team? Again, my gratitude for the internal team, and which is audited by our external auditor. And as a result of that, you can also approve the discharge of the board of directors for everything that they've done during the year 2023.
Thank
and
you.
I think we are. There you go.
Yeah, I think this was the end, right?
Yes,
Thank
this was
you
the end.
for
We were
your,
open for Q&A.
Yeah, thank you for your thorough explanations through all the financials. There are quite some questions, so we'll start right off. I have a question from the Netherlands. I'll read it out loud. Is there additional explanation to the annual account, for example, regarding income of sales and services or rent and buildings, fees or salaries?
Yes, absolutely. I'm happy to dive in, but it might be a bit too granular level of detail. So
dive in for a little bit.
Yeah, fair enough. So what we see in the income, we have a couple of things, right? So we have sales, which is mostly donations. We have services. This is mostly also ticket sales. So the ticket sales for the GAs are registered on the services. Then you have recovered costs, which is basically recovered salary. As you know, we have a couple of Dutch employees. When they are on sick leave, we are insured for that. So we have a sickness insurance for when people are on leave. And so last year there was off for a couple of months, and this salary we then get compensated for what we pay out. This is covered there. So those are the main income drivers. If you look at other things, I think maybe glancing over the largest items, printed matter, which is basically flyers, things like that. We have, of course, fees, which is usually fees to third parties. But as we mentioned, there was one accounting substitution that needs to be made. So the 149 is not the 149, but is a bit low. Oh, this is the 149. This is the adjusted one. Excuse me. So this is 149, which is basically to third-party service providers. And then, of course, you see a lot of travel and accommodation costs, which are the flights, which are the hotels, Airbnbs that the internal people needed, but also the people that we supported to come to the GA. And I think a large part of that amount is actually coming from that goal. So where we support people to come to the GA. And then, of course, the largest part is the software and maintenance costs. Last year, we did two big investments. One, of course, being the MMS, which is still pending on implementation, but we already spent quite a bit of money on that. And the second is the website project. I think the website project where all of the websites of Volt Europe and all the chapters and national chapters and local chapters are now on the same website platform. I think that was a very important, amazing project run by Ruben and the tech team. Maybe I'll keep it at that.
I think maybe if some of the topics comes by again, you can explain further, but I think they will dive in.
Actually, we do have a question on the topic you just mentioned. So we have a question coming from the Netherlands, specifically on the paper matter, asking what is included in these expenses, considering we're completely digital. So could you give a bit more detail on that?
There are certain prints that we do, so the flyers, for instance, but also we've helped some countries with flyers as well. So we supported that, and so we basically reimburse the invoice. So they send us the invoice, we reimburse it, and because we have the invoice, we count it for where it was. So, for instance, for Greece, we did that.
Thank you. There is a question from Germany. What is, in your view, the most important thing to spend money on for an organization like ours? More of a vision question than exactly what we did, but it's interesting. Good to know.
It's a very good question, and I think we just had a presentation from Janko and Sebastian, which completely explains that question, and is also my view.
All right, we have actually now a question on our donations. So do our donors generally tie conditions to their donations?
No. There are no conditions or conditionality to the donations in general. What we see, and I think this is an allusion on this, is why in the end the final donation of the Dreamery Foundation was a bit lower than expected. This was mostly because of their internal decision process, and but this is an opinion. I don't know this. This is a view. Maybe the change after the national elections in the Netherlands, what the outcome of the national elections in the Netherlands was maybe not what they hoped for. And so maybe because of that, they re-strategized. But this is my opinion. I don't know that for sure. But again, normally donations are without conditions. We strive, of course, to keep all our donors informed and to make sure that they see the progress that is made by investing in Volt Europe.
Next question is from the Netherlands. Do chapters pay membership fees every year? Did they also in 2024? And I maybe can specify it a bit further because you mentioned the membership fees, and maybe can you explain how it actually works and how that was maybe different this year?
Yeah. So I think we started the membership fees back in 2019 or 2020, right? And what happens is that each year with the budget, and we will come to the budget round in November at the next GA, the members are asked to approve the budget, and within the budget there is a line membership fee income, right? And membership fee income is usually a tier system, which says, and this is how it's done over the past 4 years, but it might change to the future. Which says that basically for the first 150 members, you pay 5%, for 152,000 members, you pay 15%, and above 1,000 members, you pay 25% of the membership contribution that they did to the country, right? So we chose this model because it was at that time the most easiest. We've discussed different things at that time. So we discussed, for instance, having dual membership fees, right? So where a member pays one time to the country and one time to Volt Europe. But for completeness sake and to really have us as one organization, we chose the system where it was the local chapter to collect the money and then divide it between Volt Europe and and the local chapter. Right. And so this is what we've done in 2023, this is what we've done in 2022, 2021, etc. This also makes sure that the biggest countries actually support Volt Europe more than the smaller countries, and then by that way, Volt Europe can also support the smaller countries. Now, for 2024, we decided in 2023 with the budget round. So the budget was approved in the GA in Paris. In that GA, in those GA notes, you can see that there is a budget proposal that says that the membership fee income for this year would be 0%. So where we at the tier of 25%, we would have 0% for 2024. And that does mean that for this year, Volt Europe has not received any financial support from the countries or from the members.
We actually have another question regarding the Dreamery donations, and specifically asking clarification on what happened, and also when and where Volt Europa decided to spend it.
So where and when it was spent, this was mostly in the hiring of the team. So it was mostly all the money, as you can see, basically the two major costs that we have is people and IT systems. So that's where it's spent. As to the Dreamery Foundation, I think I commented on that. I have a personal view. I cannot see in their minds or what their decision rationale was.
Okay, thank you. Next question, I'll read it out loud, was I was very surprised to learn there was no budget reserved for the Brussels campaign kickoff, and we only have one European campaign kickoff every 5 years. What went wrong there?
Well, actually, there was a campaign kickoff budget for this. This was under the GA. So if you look back to the slides that we presented, you will see that we have two GAs in the budget, one being the kickoff event, and the other one being the GA that we will have in Albania later on this year.
All right, so one question, what is the biggest financial challenge when it comes to being a treasurer of Volt Europa?
I think the major challenge is basically the insecurity of income. For now, and I think Janko again explained this very, very well, until we are a European political party, we are still very much dependent on donors. And I am very grateful to all our donors for everything that they've invested in the last couple of years in Volt Europe. But it also entails a risk. It entails a risk that maybe at a certain point in time, they will no longer invest in Volt Europe, which is absolutely their choice and up to them. But that means that we continually need to find new sources of income. And that's the biggest challenge. So fundraising is basically the biggest challenge.
The next question I will answer for a change. Why is there no vote 0 indicating one's participation for registration of quorum? And as chair, I will pick this one up since no quorum is required for the decision to be taken at the European General Assembly, such as this. And all members register for the event by clicking on the voting token will just be registered. But I will continue with one more question for you, Christophe. Trading income and events, that's the topic. Could you please expand on a bit on why we spent 10K in trading income and events in September and October in 2023?
This is basically when we make the costs for the GA. So basically, the costs that we make for the GA are not centralized in one line in the P&L, right? There are different invoices that we have to pay, and sometimes we have to prepay. So, for instance, the venue asks for 50% prepayment already 2 months before the actual GA. So that's probably the money that you see there.
I think we are reaching the end of our Q&A time.
I think just do one more, and then I will end this one.
All right. So last question, coming from Poland, do we actively search for donors, and do we only accept individuals or also companies and other entities?
So on the second part of the question, corporations we try to stay away from because we try to be as independent as possible. So to corporations, usually no. To foundations, which is also something, then it depends on the foundation and the goal of the foundation and the people in that foundation. But otherwise, it's mostly natural persons. Yes, on the first part, yes, we are actively looking for donors. We have had a fundraising team, also one person that was hired in the fundraising team that was able to support the countries to help them fundraise. So for instance, to set up a Spinoza circle in the respective country, find together with the local teams, and I think this is important because in the end, it's also very important that the local teams develop the fundraising network. That together with Volt Europe and the local team, we can find and identify the right people that might support our cause and that might therefore invest in Volt Europe.
Thank you, Christophe. I have two more mentions. First, votes have been open, 2 votes to approve the annual accounts and to discharge the board of directors for 2023. They've been opened at 20 hours 08 and will be closed tomorrow at 2015 Central European Summertime. And we did not have enough time to answer all questions. So please, if you still want your question answered, or if you still come up with another question, send it to the secretaries. Their email address is generalsecretary@volteuropa.org, and you can also find it on the website. With that, I think we can close this financial part of the J and go to the next.
Thank you, Sylvia. Yes, now we are going into the findings of our internal audit committee. So as you know, the General Assembly on May the 7th, 2022, elected Benjamin and Johan Wilhelm as members of the internal audit committee. And we have with us today Johan, that has a background in nonprofit business administration, and he is of the German nationality, though he is now living in Greece and is a member of Volt Greece. During the first year of office at the Internal Audit Committee, was busy establishing a basis for collaborative work, getting an overview of the organization and regulatory framework of Volt. Then they commenced their work, focusing on the financial year of 2023. Based on their audit results, today they will present a comprehensive evaluation of the current status of Volt Europa in terms of structural, legal, and financial risks, many of which are interrelated. Johan, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you so much for the introduction. First of all, well, I want to say that I'm grateful for the possibility to present our report here in a very, very short version, of course. I have to say that unfortunately I will be here alone. Benjamin, my co-auditor, is on a plane to Portugal. He had to go there on a trip that had been planned long before the date for the GA was set. So you will have to live with the fact that I'm here alone. Yeah, we want to report not only on the financial year 2023, but a little bit also on what we've been doing since we were elected in 2022. So maybe we can start with the next page. That's what I want to talk about. What have we been doing since the election? What have we been doing to try and come up with an audit for the financial year 2023? And then, of course, what are the important things that we found when we did our audit? And that leads to a number of recommendations of what we think should be done about the things that we have found. So next slide. What did we do? First of all, we had to get established. That means we had to set up some papers about our mandate. What are we actually supposed to do? We had to get clarifications from the GSO. What is our mandate? We had set up a charter, which is a tool which all internal auditors use. We had a short time when we had a third member in our commission. Actually, we were supposed to be 3 members, but this member dropped out after a few months, so we were back to 2 again, which did make things easier. And we did produce one paper, and that was a report of recommendations for the financial regulations, which were reviewed in 2023. And some of the suggestions that we made actually made it into the final version of the new financial regulations. Then, of course, we had to start planning for what we are going to do about the audit for 2023. And that basically meant trying to get together a lot of documents and making plans. Who do we want to talk to? When will we have the possibility to talk to these people? The most difficult thing is trying to get hold of documents, because when you're normally you go somewhere as an internal auditor, you enter the building and you say, okay, show me the papers. I want to see this. I want to see that. I want to see this. And then they bring you these papers and you can look at them. Whereas when you try and do an audit of Volta Europa, there's a huge amount of documents which is stored on Google Drive, but not all of them are very easy to find. And so we did spend quite a lot of time trying to get all the information together which we needed, which was the most important part of planning what we are supposed to do. And then, of course, we had to read all these things and set up the report, which also took quite a bit of time, talk to people, get all the information we needed. Okay, next slide is what is this report about? Report, or what did we do in real time? First, we established the background. We put together all the information we had about Volta Europa. We documented the policies, the strategies. Where do we want to go? What do we want to do? How do we want to do it? What's the legal background? What are the financial regulations? What is external legal background? That kind of stuff. And all this had to be put into our documentation. We decided to focus on 4 issues or 4 areas: structural risks, legal risks, financial risks, and compliance to good management practice. Why this? You would have expected us to focus only on financial risks, obviously, but we decided that because there's an external auditor who is actually looking at the financial side of Volta Europa, we should also be looking at other areas which, in our view, could impose risks for Volta Europa to actually get to the goals it wants to reach at some point in time. And those are in part embedded in the structure. They are sometimes come from the legal background. And of course, we looked at what we saw as financial risks. And because not all the regulations in the financial regulations are, well, they are not broad enough to really give a picture of good management practice. We set this goal to have good management practice as the goal that we want to reach when we see Volta Europa doing its management. Okay, next slide. What did we find? The first thing we found was, and this is under structural risks, that national parties, national chapters, national parties actually are very, very independent of Volta Europa, which is not really obvious to many people, especially if you are in the Volta Europa bubble. But in essence, all the national parties have a right to be independent. They are not allowed by the national laws to be in any way subject to influence from somebody else, let alone from somebody in another country. So this independence is legally built into the system, but it is a problem because these national parties can develop in very different ways. And many of us know different parties in different countries that are taking developments which are sometimes a bit strange when you look at them from the outside. The second thing we found was the big disparity between big and small chapters. When you look at the membership figures, you see that there's, in principle, 2 chapters, Netherlands and Germany, and they have such a huge majority, for example, when it comes to the General Assembly and to votes there, that they can easily decide anything they think fit to decide. And all the other chapters have no chance to really have any influence on what's happening in Volt Europa. Of course, I know this is not really the case, because inside the national chapters, of course, people also have different opinions, so that goes back to having them not just vote as one body, but still, in principle, in legal principle, that is the case. And it does lead to some smaller and very small chapters having the feeling that, well, they cannot really have an impact on what is happening inside Volt Europa. Another structural risk, we call that structural, is that Volt Europa is depending on the big data companies, Google, Meta, and Amazon. In this report, we also only looked at Google and, above all, Meta, our wonderful workplace. And we think that it is worrying how strongly Volt Europa depends in everything that is happening on the ability to communicate, collaborate, exchange views, develop policies. Everything happens on this Meta platform workplace. And if we just try to imagine it's going to break down next week and it will not be coming back up very soon, you can all imagine how difficult it would be to continue actually working as Volt Europa spread out of all these different countries. This leads to the aspect of data security and authentication, because there's such a lot of data in these 2 big platforms, Meta and Google, and because you get access to all these, to the whole Volt universe, simply by logging into your Volt Europa Google account. That is, in our view, an issue. In most places, the login into Volt to the Volt email account is not based on 2-factor authentication, so it's very easy to get into this whole metaverse which we have in Volt. I think it's a problem with authentication which has to be looked into. We'll come back to that later. The next point which we experienced while we were trying to audit was professional continuity. When we tried to talk to people, when we tried to contact teams, working groups, it was very often that we found that the people who were supposed to be doing that had left some point in time. And it was very difficult to actually maintain all these activities. This is what we call a problem, a risk, that professional continuity is difficult to maintain in the structure we have in Volt Europa at the moment. The last point, membership management. This has a number of aspects. The first aspect is, of course, the member management system, which is in a way outdated. By that I mean not it's bad in terms of computer facility, but it is based on a system which is homemade, which has been developed by in-house developers, and it was a wonderful system for Volt being a small organization, but now with 27,000 members, I think it is too important a system to have it based only on volunteers. It has to have some professional basis, and that is why we were very happy to see that the board has taken the decision to do that. But of course, this new system has been very long in coming, and we had some issues also with how it was going on. And there's another aspect, but I'm going to come back to that later when it comes to membership management. Oh no, I can mention now. It's the fact that Volt Europa is a very kind of odd organization because it has 20,000, 25,000 members, Volt Europa AISBL, but it has no real influence as to who is going to be a member, because the onboarding of these members is being done by the national chapters. And so it's a very funny situation that you have a big organization and they have no say really who is going to be presented to them as a member. Of course, in principle, they have the possibility to say, no, we don't want that. But they have no way to see what are the national chapters doing in terms of onboarding people that maybe shouldn't be onboarded, or denying people access that should actually have a possibility to be able to join Volt Europa. This is another aspect in the management system, which is just odd in terms of the structure that we have. Okay, next slide. Legal risks. My background used to be law a very long time ago, so of course I tried to find something that has to do with law. We think that the biggest legal risk is the contract situation with Meta Workplace for Meta, by which we mean that at the time when Volt Europa got the license to use the workplace, Volt Europa was a tiny organization. In the meantime, it is a huge organization, which is not only a normal AISBL, but it is actually running a number of 13, 14 political parties in different countries. And these chapters are members of Volt Europa as well. So it is a completely different type of organization from what it was when the license is initially given by Meta. And we think that this is or can be a very serious issue. Of course, we've learned in the meantime that Meta is going to phase out Workplace in 2025, so this will not be an issue, a legal issue, for a long time. The other thing is, as I said already, insecure authentication is a problem in itself, but of course it can also lead to problems regarding our obligations to obey GDPR. Okay, next slide. Financial risks. Yeah, again, here we have the licensing. I just want to point out, we had a short look into this. If we had to pay for Meta Workplace, the normal price is $4 per member per month. Now, if you compute that to 20,000 members, and our license is for 20,000 members, that is really a lot of money. Okay, we haven't had to pay that, but we know that when we migrate to something else, that would also not be for free. And so these are just the figures that we have to keep in mind when we think about migrating. The second aspect, it has been mentioned before, was depending on donations. That was also something that really worried us, and we wanted to know what actually happened when the Dreamery decided that they didn't want to give us the full donation they had promised, and we have learned that there was a kind of agreement with the Dreamery, and in that agreement, certain milestones had been agreed on, and then it turned out that Volt did not actually reach those milestones. And that was one of the reasons, at least, why the Dreamery decided, okay, so that we're not going to be able to continue in the same way as we had planned, which says we have to be careful when we come to agreements for donations, that we agree on milestones that can actually be achieved. The next, financial risk, transparency. No, go back, please. Transparency and good management practice in procurement of goods and services. Again, something it wasn't necessary in former years, but in the meantime, Volt is turning around such a lot of money on goods and on services that we think more transparency is necessary, that we need some kind of procedure to make sure that there are tenders happening, that we have a market research done which is transparent, this kind of thing. And the last point, we did not find any systematic cost accounting, which can be a problem when you have bigger projects like, for example, the member management system, for which we found it very difficult to find out how much it was really costing. Okay, now the next slide, which takes us to the recommendations. Yeah, well, I think that it would be important to address this issue of big and small chapters. I spoke about that. It would be important to find some better instrument from what we have now to ensure that all the different chapters are keep aligned to what we have in Volt Europa in terms of values, in terms of procedures, not only in terms of policies. Otherwise, it might be difficult when the time comes and we can try to merge all these different chapters into one European party. We'll find out they are so different that you can remerge them. So we think this is important. The replacement for Meta has been spoken about. We were very happy to say, point 4, that the paid staff have been taken on, because we think that is an important basis for professional continuity, and we would encourage the board to continue in that direction, even if it is difficult. But we think that professionalization is one of the principles we have, and to some extent needs professional staff, paid staff. We think that there should be a review on the onboarding procedures that are being done. At the moment, it is extremely easy to get into Volt Europa without having any form of, for example, personal authentication. Nobody asks for your passport. Nobody asks for anything. They believe what you say. The introduction of a procurement procedure, I'm not going to say more about that. It's clear as itself. And also systematic cost accounting, we very much advocate that this should be done. With that, I can come to the last slide. We found no substantial deviations or indications that money had been wrongfully spent for anything. We have come up with a huge respect for the workloads that many people in the operational teams have been managing to do. And so in the end, we can also say that we are very happy with what we have seen, and this reflects our findings and our recommendations. There's nothing seriously wrong. Everything is actually astoundingly well done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Johan, for that presentation. That was perfectly on time as we planned it. And so now myself and Ines, we will jump into the Q&A questions because we do have a few for you. And I'll start with the first one. can Volt Europa do? What can Volt Europa do to support small chapters to help them reach better results from an audit standpoint?
That is a very difficult question because in many countries, actually, the law says these national parties are not allowed to accept any help from anywhere. So it can only be help in terms of, well, using the Volt infrastructure and giving advice, maybe sending people who can help on the spot, things like that. But as soon as it comes into sending money, I know that in many chapters, I know it for Greece, but I think it's the same in many other chapters. For example, it is just not permitted. So it is difficult to really give substantial help.
All right, thank you so much, Johan, for your presentation. Now we have a question from you regarding cooperation. How was the cooperation with Volt Europa during your audit?
Amazing. We always came up with new questions, and we always found people who responded very quickly and tried to help as much as they could. The problems with cooperation was more finding documents. And that is, if you really try to find something on Workplace, if you really try to find something in Google Drive, we all know it can take a lot of time. And so a lot of time which we spent in preparing this report was not spent on talking to people and on analyzing the papers that they gave us, but to get these papers, first of all.
Okay, thank you for that response that I believe we all experienced. So the next question is, with the dependency of Volt on Meta, do you consider it necessary to hire IT and data security specialists in order to control the data security issues and protect us from the big data?
We don't think that is a need at the moment. I mean, we have the data protection officers, and they are taking care of the legal side. And I know that the tech team has a security sub-team, and they are looking into possibilities to improve our security situation. The first measures that can be done are very simple. I mentioned one, two-factor authentication. The second thing which we think would be important is to have some kind of authentication when people actually sign on to be a member of Volt Europa. If we did that, we we don't need to look what Facebook is doing with our data. That is more a general feeling. I think many people in Europe have that we should try and be independent of these basically American big companies and try to stand on our own feet.
All right, one other question. So what's the one core recommendation that you would give to the people who will be implementing these recommendations that you just gave?
Different people will be implementing different recommendations. So it's very difficult to prioritize those. I think everything is important to some extent. Some has more of a time constraint, like finding something new for Workplace. I mean, if they really switch it off in 2025, that is a very short time to come up with an alternative project. We think that it would be something we would look forward to having when we do our report for this year. That would be a procedure for purchasing to make sure that the decisions that are being taken there have a systematic way of being taken. And of course, from the financial aspects, cost accounting would also be very important. As we start having more and more projects and these cost more and more money, it's important to know how we spend this money, when the budget that we have allotted to them has been spent, or do we have to increase the budget? This kind of situation, controlling a company, an enterprise that has the size of Europa cannot live without some kind of project-based, at least, cost accounting. From my point of view, that's what I would hope that is going to happen soon.
So we have 2 more questions before we wrap up. The second to last is, do we plan to do QIC, know your customer, on each member? How are we going to manage that personal information?
Well, it's not for us to decide that, but I could imagine that when, and I know that different countries do onboarding differently. When I was onboarded in 2018, there was a long interview with 2 persons, and they asked me a lot of nasty questions. Have you studied all the documents about World Europa? What do you know about World Europa? Why do you want to be in World Europa? Of course, in that situation, it would have been very easy to say, hey, can you just show us your ID card in the camera? And that's it. There's nothing more special about that. Just to make sure that the people who actually say they want to be World Europa members are the people they say they are. Very easy.
And our final question that actually contains 2 questions in it. So which type of person could be a good addition to the internal audit team? And the second one, and can we find this audit, so the text that you showed, somewhere in written form?
Okay, the first question was a third member for the audit team. Well, we are waiting for that. It would be ideal if it's someone who has some auditing background. Benjamin has an auditing background. He was an external auditor for a number of years before he joined the team. Now he's doing something different. I am a non-auditor who is doing auditing because I have been audited for many years. So I think it would be good to have someone who is also has some professional background in auditing. That would be ideal. Yeah, and about the report, the full report of 26, 27 pages has been presented to the General Secretary and to the board. I'm not sure how they have decided how they want to give access to that. That is not really something that we want to decide. We think that it shouldn't be shared to 20,000 people, to just give the other extreme, because some of the things that are written into that are, well, could be not so good if they just get dispersed everywhere. And if you have 20,000 people in the basket, then you have to be afraid that at least 2 of them will not be there for honest reasons. That is my personal feeling.
Thank you very much for your answers, Johan. And now we thank you for your presence and the answering of those questions. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Bye-bye.
And that was our last speaker of tonight. I'll give you a short wrap up before officially closing this General Assembly already. We started off with our co-presidents, and they reflected on the policy program we made together, on politicians who joined us, and the amazing start we had of the electoral program and the electoral campaign in Brussels. They also thanked everyone, all members of Volt, and maybe also not members of Volt, who contributed to the success we had with 5 MEPs in the European Parliament at the moment for actually representing all of us. And I think that's a great win. And what they also mentioned is also a great win against the movement of the far right, and also a great win for Europe, for every one of us. Also, the last thing I really like what they said is, even though maybe there were no wins in your country or your chapter yet, see it as a first step, as small wins, even though maybe not no seats yet. They should still encourage you, and please continue. Next, we had a presentation of the mysterious NEMAP team. We now know what it is, luckily, thanks to Teun. It was a big team who prepared a lot of things for the new members of the European Parliament on the negotiations. They took into account priorities, how to take into account for full chapters. I didn't know there was so much work to do. So also big thanks to what they did, all the people who were in that team. Then we had a presentation of the strategy team with a Q&A. We had Sebastian and Janko with the strategy up till 2029. It's still 5 years to go, but I'm happy that we have already people thinking so far ahead and taking us along with the plans and the challenges and the decisions we can make and should make also in the next GAs. We had a presentation from our treasurer, Christoph, with all the numbers, and I'm always happy with good explanation on the numbers, and also very happy on everyone who is making sure it's very clear. So thank you for your questions as well. I think it's very good for an organization as ours that we are sharp on everything. And we concluded with the internal audit committee represented by Johan, and he actually concluded with his audit that next to huge respect he has, that everything that is done is overall pretty good. So I think we can be proud of that. And he focused on the structure, the legal part, financials. So to wrap that up, the vote, which is already opened, will be shared on Friday. Next, if you have any questions, especially regarding the NEMAP team, treasury team, strategy, audit committee, or anything else, you can just email the General Secretary office. I've mentioned their email addresses before, generalsecretary@voteeuropa.org. They will point you to the people you need. And also, please email if you want to participate. And I personally want to encourage everyone, especially also women and non-binary people, to participate, because as you could see, there were a lot of males presenting who would like to be a bit more diverse. So please see this as your encouragement. Then we go to the official closing of this General Assembly, which is very important to say. We have reached the end of the discussions, and my role as a chairperson, I officially close the General Assembly. And how nice would it have been if we now could all go outside and meet each other and chat and relax for a bit. Unfortunately, not today, but it will be in our next General Assembly in Tirana. I hope to see you all. I'm very curious. Actually, Daniel and Ines, will you join us over there?
I
Most
will.
definitely.
A lot of sounds. They were positive. Everyone, if you're still online watching, add it to the chats. I've seen lots of people who are also joining us over there. Would be very nice to see you in person again. I always look forward to those GAs and those days along the GAs. Some words of thanks. First, thank you, Daniel and Ines, for being the co-hosts of this evening. Also, thank you for everyone online watching and participating, sending in the questions. It's very important for our organization, what I already said, to have sharp people asking questions. And I want to thank everyone behind the scenes, because there is a lot of work and they don't know it, but they are in the room as well. There's a lot of work behind the scenes, and without them, it would not have been happened. So thanks all. Goodbye. See you in Tirana.
See you in Tirana.